And away we setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. Done. Redirecting Facebook Live. All right. There we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another evening of Sohmalife Sundays. My name is Reverend Lynn LaBorde, and my co-host, Rob Scarpa.
Good evening.
And our special guest, one of our dear friends, David Young. Hey, David, welcome.
Hey, you guys.
We
nice
are
to see you.
We're so delighted to have you here. Sohmalife Sundays was born of Rob reaching out to me sometime last month saying, I'd like to do some, live video show. And I'm like, that's a great idea. And he's like, will you do it with me? And I said, of course I will. So we've set up a bunch of speakers to come in and talk with us. Rob is a remarkable channel. He has the ability to open himself up to spirit, and he gets these incredible channeled messages that comes through, and he writes them down, probably like William Shakespeare. And he's gonna share some of those messages. I am a psychic medium and a full body trance channel, and I channel about a half a dozen or so of the ascendeds from the other side. And David is an extraordinary world-renowned musician, author. He is known for his music all over the world. He has music that plays in probably over 20,000 facilities, healing facilities for the music that he plays is really extraordinary. He is also known for channeling George Harrison. And David, would you please share a little bit more with us about who you are and what you do?
I play these instruments, the recorder. I play all the different sizes of them. And I've recorded 60 different albums of music. I've sold over 1 million CDs. I've had over 15 million streams of my music. I've written 4 books, and I'm a painter. My booth won Best Booth at Art Basel in the Spectrum section of Art Basel last year. And I'm a nice guy.
You are.
He is a nice guy.
What's so funny
I can
is
attest to that.
this painting of yours is behind me for all the recordings that I'm doing. A bunch of your art that's here in the sanctuary. And he's someone that's really dear to me and Rob, and he's a brother, literally like soul brother. So thank you so much for being with us. We're going to get to hear some of David's amazing music. And we usually start out by, Rob, I ask you to share one of your writings with us. Do you have one that you'd like to share in particular with us this evening?
Well, this week, I asked for a message for the collective, of humanity. And lo and behold, Alcazar stepped in. Now, I don't know what dimension Alcazar is from. From their aspect, it's all one dimension. From our aspect, there's multiple dimensions. That's what I gather nowadays. But it could change tomorrow. Who knows? I mean, everything is always shifting and changing for us as far as what we understand and then the latest and greatest of concepts that are delivered to us. But so I asked for a message. I called out to Osiris, who is my guide, my engineer, who puts me in touch with people, my gatekeeper. So I said, who has a message for the collective this day? And I heard, it is I, Alcazar. And I'm delighted to join with you this day. It is most important that our connection be maintained, for there is great knowledge that I would like to share with you and all humanity. You are all entering a time, a moment in your now that will be a defining moment, a chance, an opportunity to choose love and show compassion. It is what is dearly needed at this time. Humanity is working itself into a frenzy over the leadership of themselves, when actually each should recognize their own divinity and take control of their own lives. It is most important that the sovereignty of each soul be recognized. No longer should it be left to another to decide what is best for you. It is a time of great shift on your world, as well as the collective. You all are aware of the cleansing and reclaiming of Gaia in an effort to prepare for the new and more benevolent existence that is to unfold as the next chapter of humanity is written. Again, we say, please, beloved, hold that space for as many as you can. There are so many who simply need a little reassuring. It really does not require much. It can be as easy as a smile. For in that energy, another can feel at ease, and that is where humanity is headed. So hold your heads high, look to the ones you love as well as the ones you don't know, and show them that there is always a reason to smile. Even in the worst of moments, it is important to remember that you all are dearly loved by the Creator. And I asked Alcazar, can you speak to the age of Aquarius that is unfolding? He said, that is the ease in which I and we were referring. I said, is there a way to expedite the transition and minimize the pain and suffering of so many? Alcazar said, that is entirely up to the collective of humanity. The sooner one steps out of fear and into love, the sooner the transition. What you resist will persist, as you well know. So by remaining calm and trusting in the power of self to create a better plane of existence for all who choose is of great importance. The stage is set and the curtain will soon be raised. All have a ticket, but it is up to each individual soul to step inside. It has been my pleasure to communicate with you at this moment. You are all my beloveds. Alcazar.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
It's remaining at ease. It was going to ease us into this transition of the age of Aquarius. If we fight it, if we resist, it just makes it more difficult. It slows it down. So that's, going under on that message, I believe, along with staying in love and compassion, which is pretty much the theme through every message every week. Love and compassion.
At the end of last year, I got connected to a community that's called Channeling Jesus, where people are studying A Course in Miracles. And Jesus is being channeled by a woman named Tina Spalding, and she does an amazing job. They've written a whole bunch of books together. She was told back in 2014 that she was going to be bringing in 20 different celebrities. And she got to number 19, and it had been like JFK and Marilyn Monroe and Albert Einstein. And she was like, please don't have it be Jesus. Please don't have it be Jesus. And then it turned out that number 20 was Jesus. And so they've had this extraordinary journey together. And most recently, they've been doing 40 days and 40 nights of Jesus channeling through her every single day. The videos are going up on YouTube, and the messages that have been coming through with him are so powerful. I encourage all of you to go check it out. I think we just had day 25 or maybe day 26. But, David, I know that you have a very, very personal relationship with Jesus and how you lovingly refer to him as the heavenly team. Would you like to share some of that, some of what it is that you've experienced?
Sure. First, I want to ask the woman who had the 20 people she was going to channel, and she really hoped that Jesus wasn't going to be one of them. What was her religious background or her cultural background?
She had been Christian, but there was so much stigma for her about who Jesus was that she was just terrified that she was now going to be known as the woman who channels him. And that's exactly who she is. She's since obviously gotten over that. She's the woman, the author of Jesus, My Autobiography, which is one of the cleanest and clearest books. And David, definitely a book that you would love. I've mentioned it to you before. She was indoctrinated like the rest of us were in what Christianity was, not according to Jay, but, according to everything that we had learned, growing up in these different societies.
Well, you know how your show is about love and compassion, and it all comes back to love and compassion. And we always look to the ascended masters for help and guidance, but we don't always look at them with compassion for what they've lived through. And it's, that saying, it's weird to be me, right? Well, it's really weird to be Jesus, because Christian people love him for things he never said. and Jewish people resent him for things he never said. So it's a really unique situation that he's in. Hold on, something just appeared on my screen. Okay, there we go.
That's really well said.
Well,
Like they didn't really get to know him.
well, unless you've had a channeling experience with him where he appears to you, everything you're basing a relationship on with him is absolute hearsay. That's 1,800 years old and has been manipulated. So this way, everybody knows what it feels like to be misunderstood by a couple of people at work. Well, how do you think it'd feel to be misunderstood by like 2 billion people at one time, not a couple of people?
Yeah.
And it's the interesting thing about the age of Aquarius that we're in right now is that because channeling has become an accepted thing. When I first started, when this whole channeling thing started happening in my life, I had been meditating at that point for 27 years, but my meditation studies really didn't have anything to do at all with channeling. It was frowned upon, it was more a path of spiritual studies that was helpful, and it taught meditation and everything, but the idea of channeling, that wasn't part of the whole deal. And where we're at right now, because of a couple of things, but one of the real key things that has changed life is the fact that about 75 years ago, these what do they call those things when somebody has a heart attack and dies, and they have the 2 electric shock things that go on somebody's chest, and it gives a huge electric shock and it brings them back to life. Well,
A defibrillator.
Yeah, well, it's an electric shock with there's a certain word for it, but I think you know what I mean. Somebody dies and they hook these electrode things, this big thing onto their chest. It gives a huge surge of electricity, and it brings them back to life. Okay, so before 75 years ago, before those things were invented, if you died, you were dead, and that was the end of it. They didn't have these machines to bring you back to life. And what's happened over the last 75 years, and I learned this at the conference for the International Association of Near-Death Studies, is that when this machinery, these electronics were available for doctors in emergency rooms to bring people back to life, these people who came back to life all of a sudden are telling people what it was like on the other side while they were in their coma, while they were flatlined, while they were dead. But because they were able to come back to life, we got to hear for the first time ever what people experienced when they were dead. And even Alexander's book, Proof of Heaven, it's like sold 6 million copies. He was a doctor. Anybody who knows anything about spirituality has heard about that book or read about that book. Mm-hmm. And because he was a brain surgeon at Harvard, he was taken really seriously when he was describing what the afterlife was like. He didn't have to die completely, because we don't have to die completely to experience that. Now, one of the things that is a byproduct of a near-death experience is that after the near-death experience, that person knows things that they never knew before. They have an understanding of life. Like, let's say this is half of life. This is the physical world, like in an hourglass. And let's say this part is the heavenly world, the spiritual world. These people got to experience that other world and came back to their physical body because it wasn't time for them to die yet. And most of these people came back with psychic abilities that they never had before. So that's one of the things that, if you read 1,000 different stories of people who had near-death experiences, when they came back into their physical life, they had these psychic abilities. So that affected every one of these people. So Jesus had a near-death experience. The reason why that all happened is because the day he was crucified was on a Jewish holiday. It was on the eve of Passover. It was on April 3rd. And there was an ancient law in in the Roman Empire that stated that a Jewish person could not be tortured over a Jewish holiday. And so because it was sundown of the holiday of Passover, that's why Jesus was taken down off the cross after 6 hours. He was put in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. Now that is in the Bible. Everybody knows that he was put in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, and the last person who saw him in the Bible is Mary Magdalene. Now, just to give you a little bit of common sense clarity of how that all happened, we've all seen those Easter movies where there's 3 guys who were crucified on that day, right? Only one of those guys was taken down off the cross after 6 hours and put in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. That's because only one of those 3 guys was married to Joseph of Arimathea's daughter, whose name was Mary Magdalene. Why do you think they tried to create a bad reputation for Mary Magdalene? Because they used that as a diversion. The church used that as a diversion to keep people off track, because there were rumors that he was married. Of course he was married. He had children with them. They were a family. And so then when his body is basically saved, he's saved by Mary Magdalene, who, with the help of a Roman soldier, brings a wooden cart with a horse that's pulling the cart. There's hay all over the wooden cart, and this Roman soldier, after 3 days, takes his body out of the tomb, where he is having a near-death experience. It affected him spiritually. He was already a really super spiritual guy, but now he had a near-death experience, which exponentially made him even more spiritual, because every single person who's ever had a near-death experience has more psychic abilities after that experience.
David, you know what's really crazy? In one of the 40-day videos, Jesus tells everybody to go find near-death experience videos where they cross over and watch them. And they come back to tell about it. He was talking about it. That's what he had.
Absolutely. You know, if you want to know what Brooklyn looked like, well, you could get a video camera, you can go online, or you could ask 10 people who live in Brooklyn, in that area, and you can ask them for a description what it looks like, right? Well, the same thing is, if you want to know what heaven looks like, you speak to somebody who had a near-death experience. It's really, really common sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the synchronicities of all of this.
Well, it's funny for me, when I started on this path, one of the first things I asked one of my first teachers was, what book do I read? Where do I start? You know, give me the book. Let me read the book and understand all of this, right? It's got to be in a book, right? And I was directed to a book by Dr. Newton, Michael Newton, called Journey of Souls, and then Destiny of Souls. And they were books on near-death experiences and people's experience telling a hypnotherapist what happened. And each one of those patients told the same story, different colors, different people at the gate. Everything was the same, just different components. But for the most part, it was the same. I saw a light. I met with an angel. I met with my grandmother. I met with my father. Whoever they expected to meet, they met. And they were told, okay, it's not your time. And like you said, they come back with different abilities. Same come back being able to play the piano. Some can do any different instruments. Some can do math, phenomenal engineering equations. So yeah, it definitely has an activation effect when you go to the other side and come back. And I guess that's part of our soul contract, where at that point, if you go back, you're going to have these new abilities which can help you expand your knowledge and the knowledge of others. I mean, that's, to keep it simple. That's
There's
kind of
there's that other fabulous book, Heaven is for Real, about the stories of that young Todd Burpo.
Awesome.
Over.
Movie.
Yeah, exactly. And Jesus was riding a big horse, and he came back, and just, I have this dear friend named Wendy, and Wendy channeled Archangel Metatron, and she's taught over 800 people, probably even closer to 900 now, how to channel. And she said to me, she remembered the point like about 10 years ago where she goes, oh my God, this is really real. like having that moment of going, like, they really are on the other side. They really do talk to us. They really exist. And this is the illusion, and that's what's real. And that's
Yeah, there's so many people who, when they had their near-death experience, and I've heard so many of these experiences because I played music at the national convention for people who had near-death experiences, and there were thousands of people there, and there's so many people who, when let's say it was a car accident and they were knocked unconscious and they were sent up to heaven, and when they got to heaven, the feeling that they described, so many of these people described the same thing. They was like, oh my God, thank God earthly life was just a dream, because now I'm back to reality. The heavenly world, when you're in that heavenly reality, that is reality. And when you look at the physical life from that perspective, this looks like the dream.
stunning, stunning. David, I would love it if you would share some of your incredible music with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I heard about David 3 years ago, a friend of mine who I met at a convention, he said his name was Hanson, and he says,
Oh yeah.
you got to go see this guy. Um, James and I came. He said, you got to go see this guy. He plays his flute, and people have memories of past lives. And and I was like, what? And James and I went. We were in this little room. I think there were like 15 of us in the room. I'm one of those people who count people when they're in the room, how many people there are. And David was there, and he started playing this music, and literally it was like an experience of being transported to some other realm. And literally, you took us through a meditation, and who met me was Jesus. And I was like, get out of here. This is so crazy. So, yeah, love to have you share some of your magic with us, love.
All right.
That is stunning. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
You're
Thank you.
so welcome.
David, what do you think it is about your music that is so otherworldly? Why is it able to transport us to other realms?
Well, when you play two of these instruments at one time, the two flutes actually create a third note. It's called a triharmonic tone. So I'll show you what I mean. That's clearly one note, right? And this is a lower note. But when you play them together, you're going to hear zzz, right? You hear the third note?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear the third note over there?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a frequency. Everything in heaven is based on frequency and vibration. So that frequency that you hear with these two instruments, the only instruments that can create that frequency that I know of is these flutes, these recorders, and the singing bowls, if you have two of those playing at one time. And that frequency is the frequency we hear when a person is having an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience.
Wow.
Really?
So your soul, when your soul hears that sound, that frequency that I create with those two flutes, okay, your soul knows that sound. It's familiar with that sound because all the lifetimes and all the time we spend in heaven, in between lives, when we're meditating, if you're having a near-death experience, whatever, that frequency is like the thing that calls your soul, and like a familiar, that's the sound of heaven. And that's what heaven sounds like. When people hear my music, when I play at the near-death conferences, very often they say that the closest thing they ever heard to the music that they heard in heaven during their near-death experience is the music that I create at these performances.
Wow.
David, may I ask, you talk about that third note, you explain it. At what point did you realize that was the frequency of heaven? How, did someone tell you, or did you glean it from a channel, a message, or, how did you figure that out?
Well, I got this app on my phone. No, I'm just kidding. It's not an app on my phone. How did I figure it out? I figured it out that when I started to perform at these conferences for people with near-death experiences, and I consistently heard from these people that was the sound that they heard in heaven. It was this frequency. And there's a lot of great flute players in the world, and I would wonder, well, why did people have these experiences so consistently with me? Before the virus happened, I started doing these meditation events in 2014, and I did 509 events between 2014 and 2019 when it actually was 2020. And during that time, it was like, just imagine you did 500 experiments.
Mm.
And, because I would have a situation, what is science based on? The same outcome with when you put a certain thing together. That's what we call science, right? And so I was doing all these events, and people would consistently share the same experiences. Night after night, I did these events 3 or 4 nights a week. In the beginning, the events were called Soul Ascension Workshops. And, the way they ended up being called were called a portal between heaven and earth, because that was what was being created. I found a way of explaining this stuff in such a simple way that people were able to wrap their minds around it. And I would talk to people and I would open their minds, because our minds are like an umbrella. They're really not very useful unless you open it up, and I would do these events, and, it's a pretty incredible thing if you have, especially if you've grown up in a Jewish background like I grew up. But just imagine you have 25 people in a room, And 18 out of the 25 people shared that they were visited by either Jesus, his wife Mary Magdalene, or Mother Mary. 18 out of 25 people. How long are you going to be skeptical? Okay, let's say you're skeptical by the third person, and then the fifth person. And then it's like, is this really intelligent for me to be skeptical when all of these people, night after night, city after city, are all sharing the same experiences?
You can't be.
Oh.
You gotta, there's
I tried to be. I
I-
tried to be skeptical. Believe me, I was more skeptical than anybody I know about this stuff. You couldn't even talk to me about channeling. I would never have this conversation that we're having like 10 years ago. Never. If there was something on TV that came on in channeling, I would click the channel clicker because I absolutely thought it was a bunch of baloney. But I'll tell you, man, when, you know, once you have that experience where you get beyond the skepticism, then you're talking about real experience. You know, you're talking about something that you know something about.
David,
I never expected to be talking about this.
right.
You know.
Exactly. We have a question, and then the question is, it's from Miriam. She says, have you found that it is a specific note or any two notes played together that make the triad?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Would
Dave?
you,
I'm sorry. Lynn, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, would you share some of the conversations that you've been able to have with Jay, with Jesus, and you know, like how those came about? That's one of my favorite stories that you tell.
Oh, I don't know which story.
The ones
Basically,
with Bob.
okay. Well, what happened was I was doing these meditation events in the beginning that were promoting my book, Channeling Harrison, about my experiences with George Harrison. It started in 2010. I kept track of all of them. I had enough stories for a book by 2013. And so I was doing these events promoting my book, and I would tell a lot of stories. I had a PowerPoint that was really impressive. And after doing those events for about 6 months, one of my friends asked me if I would do an event without telling these stories about George and just do 2 30-minute meditations and leave time for people to share their experiences after each meditation. Okay. So after the second meditation, there were 2 people who shared that they saw Jesus in the same spot. And I thought these people were crazy, you know. Well, while I was packing up, this woman came over. She was my friend's wife, and she came over and she whispered to me and she said, I didn't want to say anything in front of everybody, but I saw him in the same place as the other 2 people. Okay. So the following day, I called up Bob Murray, who was a channeler who was really instrumental in me understanding how interconnected the physical world is with the heavenly dimension. And he had been channeling George Harrison every day for an hour to an hour and a half. So I would actually, can you imagine? I had so many conversations with George that there were times that we ran out of things to say, you know. And I said, you know, Bob, you've been channeling George every day for 6 months. Can you channel Jesus? Because 3 people at my event last night saw him in the room. And I'd like to understand, why did he come last night? You know, there's like a funny thing in the Jewish religion, like, why is tonight different than any other nights? Like, you know, for one of the holidays, you know. So for me, like, well, what happened? Why did he show up? Because I'd been doing those events for 6 months. So I said, Bob, can you connect with Jesus? You know, I'd like to ask him why he came to the event last night. And he said, well, I can't guarantee it, but I'll try. So there's a, you know, silence on the other end of the phone, and I'm waiting to see, well, is Jesus going to pick up the phone or not, you know? So after a couple of minutes, he said, okay, I connected with Jesus. What do you want to ask him? My mind went blank. I couldn't think of anything to say. All I could think was, how weird is this? You know, growing up in a Jewish family, I'm on the phone with a channel and I'm talking to Jesus. Like, that's something that no Jewish boy ever thinks he's going to be in that kind of situation, you know? So because my mind had got blank, I said, you know, this feels so strange talking to you. because I grew up in a Jewish family, you know. And the first thing he said to me is, I can understand that. I grew up in a Jewish family also, which made me laugh. You know, if somebody makes you laugh, it kind of makes you feel comfortable with them. And I said, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because I don't know what to believe about what I've heard about you. I also don't know what not to believe about what I've heard about you. So if you're going to have a conversation with somebody from 2,000 years ago, where are you going to start that conversation? You know, he doesn't have a Facebook profile, you know, at least he didn't at that point. And so tell me what you like, or tell me what you don't like. That was what I was being guided to ask him. And the first thing he said was, I don't like rituals. When people do rituals, they think they're getting closer to God. But a ritual, because it's done so many times mechanically over and over again, it's not coming from love, and it's not coming from a person's heart. And the only way we really get closer to God is through opening our heart and through love. And at first I thought he was talking about the Catholic Church with all the rituals they had. But then the more I thought about it, every religion has rituals that people do over and over again, and it becomes mechanical. The second thing he said was, I don't like pedestals. When people put others up on high pedestals, the only thing they get is a stiff neck from looking up, which I thought was funny. And then the third thing he said was an absolute mind blower. I never, ever expected him to say this. He said, I did not create Christianity. Now, the way this was all orchestrated, a couple of weeks later, I called a friend of mine just to chat. And I told her these three things that Jesus told me through Bob Murray. And she said, you know, I just finished reading a book that was channeled by a writer, and the whole book is this writer channeling Jesus. And those exact words are in that book. Now, since that happened, that was back in 2000 and the end of 2014. There have been 5 other people who, when I shared that at my events, they shared that they had an experience with Jesus, and he said the exact same 3 things. Now, how is that even possible if it's not true? And why would he say the same things to multiple people? It's obvious why he said the same 3 things, is because he wanted these people to be able to validate each other's experiences as a confirmation.
Fascinating. I'm just realizing that Jesus came to Tina in about 2014 also. And she had a Kundalini download during the summer before, you know, what was it, 12, 21, 2012, when it was supposed to be like the big whatever.
Yeah.
And then she started channeling a collective that called themselves Ananda, and she was having Kundalini experiences for about 3 weeks, a couple times a day, to prepare her for Jesus. So I just started channeling him recently, about 2 weeks ago. And he said to me, you wouldn't have been able, like you would have turned away if I had come to you when you started channeling a few years ago. So he sent Athena, and he sent Hathor, and he sent his wife, and he sent Mother Mary, and you know, all these people, Archangel Michael came through, and Sanat Kumar and a few others, to help me like prepare to develop a frequency to be able to channel him directly. And when he first started coming through, I cried, like David, like ugly crying, like felt like unworthy, like so much love, so much light. And in the beginning of the Course of Miracles, there are these 50 miracle principles that he brought through to Helen back in the early 60s. And we're going through them, and there's a group of girlfriends, there's 6 of us. We meet in the mornings and we read the miracle principle, and then we go into a meditation, and then I've been bringing him through. At first I was bringing Magdalene through, but again, Magdalene was preparing me to bring him through. But there was nothing like it. And he's funny, and he's so user friendly, you know. It's really been an amazing experience of being with him, someone that to me, like you very much, is a brother on so many different levels, you know. It's been really, really extraordinary.
Well, it's a big family, no doubt.
Yeah, it is.
But one of the things that you know, like if you were going to try to understand the basics of math,
Mhm.
you know, adding, arithmetic is the basics of math. You can never understand anything further in math if you don't understand the basics of adding 1 + 1 is 2 and 2 + 2 is 4. That's the basics.
Mhm.
Where humanity is heading now with this whole spiritual revolution, this evolution that's happening spiritually, where it's all going is that the idea that these religions are separate, that is archaic. There's a reason why when they're all connected.
Mhm.
Buddha and Jesus and Moses and Krishna and Mother Mary and all of them, they're all on the same team.
Yeah.
Why do people feel like they need to separate all these people? But you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Let's say Buddha experienced God. Great. And let's say Moses experienced God. And Jesus also, and Krishna also. Let's say they all experienced God, right? We all have been told that God is this amazing love that comes out of the Creator, right? So if they've all experienced that amazing love, wouldn't they want to share it with other people? And wouldn't the first people they would share it with was other people who'd experienced that amazing love, that God realization, if you want to call it that. You know, everything in the physical world gets separated. You're rich or you're poor, you're this color or that color, you live on this continent or that continent. Everything in heaven is one thing. It's not separated. In the physical world, we have cells and atoms, right? That's what our bodies are made of. In the heavenly world, our bodies are made out of light. Now, if our bodies are made out of light and everything travels at the speed of light, that means everything in the heavenly world happens instantaneously. So whatever you think, it travels at the speed of light and it's instant. All the millions of people who had near-death experiences described that when they were in the heavenly dimension, whatever they thought of, whatever they wondered about, appeared right in front of them right then. If you wonder about something in the physical world, it takes time for that to manifest. You know, if you cut yourself in the physical world, well, it may take a couple of days or a week for it to heal up. In the heavenly world, everything happens right now. It's really frustrating to have experienced this stuff and still talk to people who don't get it and don't understand it at all. They're trying to understand God and they don't understand that 1 + 1 = 2. God is a being that's a creator, but when people experience God, they don't usually experience the creator because the power of the creator is so powerful. It would be way too overwhelming. It would like blow a fuse in that soul.
Yeah.
When people experience what we think is God, the creator, it's actually experiencing the group of ascended masters together, whether it's one of them or two of them or a bunch of them. Those ascended masters are the beings that can help bring us up to the creator. But man, before we get to the creator, we got to go through the first year and the second year and the third year. We have to be able to contain or have that experience without it just totally messing us up.
Yeah. We've been being prepared for something. David, was there a moment where you went, "Oh my God, the reason that I ended up playing the recorders is to be able to bring this harmonic forth"? Like you could have, it could have been flute or drums. I mean, obviously you play the guitar beautifully, but when did you realize like that it was leading you to something that was going to be so significant?
Well, when I was a kid and I played the recorder, like starting when I was 7 years old, by the time I was 8 years old, I was good enough to play with anybody in the world on any instrument and any style of music because I just got it. And then I played guitar in high school and I played in heavy metal bands and, you know, did that whole thing. I didn't realize that this flute thing was going to be anything until it was, well, I ran out of money in 1990. I moved to California. I played the flute on Venice Beach with a woman named Lisa who played the Celtic harp, and we made tapes called Celestial Winds. We sold 100,000 tapes together, tapes and eventually CDs. And it wasn't until about 2.5 years after we were doing that. And I never looked at it at that point like it was a career, because I was making enough money to live in LA. And, you know, I was a struggling singer and a songwriter and a guitar player. And what happened was that I was going to, the harpist and I, it was in 1992, I was going to leave and I was going to move to Nashville to try to make it in country music, believe it or not. And believe me, I never, ever listened to country music, but I was a singer songwriter, and I, you know, I played electric guitar, but I played a lot of acoustic guitar. And, you know, I wanted to go to Nashville because, you know, where else are you going to go? And LA was not doing anything for me. And at that point, we were playing at Universal City Walk, which was outside of Universal Studios. And they had hired us to play 25 out of 30 nights in December up at City Walk. And I have to tell you that the first 20 nights were horrible because it was really cold. You wouldn't think that California is cold at night, you know.
No,
Seems like it's
especially up there on the hill. It's you're exposed.
Yeah, so we played up there for 20 nights. It was freezing. And we were so bummed out that when Christmas, the night of Christmas passed, we were supposed to play the next night. We were so bummed out because I was going to leave the following week. And we just didn't even show up. And then the very next night, so we had like 4 more nights to play. And when we counted the money at the end of the night, we thought it must be a mistake, because when we counted it up, it was 3 times as much money as we had ever made at that point, doing that for 2.5 years. Okay, we literally counted that money 3 times because we thought there's got to be a mistake. There's no way we could have made this much money, that we could have sold that much music, because it seemed like it was just a normal day, you know? And so the very next night we went back there, and the same thing happened again. We sold 3 times as much as we had ever sold, and we counted the money 3 times because we thought this got to be a mistake. And that happened 4 nights in a row. And then Lisa said to me, "So are you still going to leave?" Because I was going to be leaving the next week to move to Nashville. And I said, "I'll tell you what, because we had these cassette tapes back then, we didn't have a CD. I said, if we take this money, some of this money, and make a real CD out of it, then I'll stay. But if we're going to just keep making these cassette tapes, you know what I mean? It was really kind of antiquated, you know. I said, I'm not going to stay." So we took some of that money, we made our first CD. And then from that point, it was just like a nonstop thing that was going up. And people would constantly come back to see us because they knew where we would be all the time, 3 or 4 nights a week at City Walk, or on Saturday and Sunday at Venice Beach. And it was just really amazing to me that how this music affected people. I remember once my younger brother, you know, he and I used to be very close, and, you know, I used to send him my rock music, and, you know, we used to share it because he's a musician also. And I asked him, you know, "Did you hear that last rock tape that I sent you? This must have been like in 1992. And he said, "Yeah, that really didn't do much for me, but man, that flute music that you sent me, we listen to it all the time." Now, one of the keys with music or any kind of entertainment is whether that there's something in whatever you're creating that makes people want to hear it a second time. How many tapes do you have, or CDs do you have, or albums that you listen to one time and you never ever listen to it again? You know, there was something about the flute music that I made that made people want to listen to it all the time. There was a woman who got my very first CD that was called Celestia Was One. And she sent us an email and she said, "I bought your CD and I've listened to that CD on repeat all day long, all night long for 9 months. Do you have any other CDs?" Which was kind of funny, you know.
Speaking of a second time, would you be willing to play one more time for us before we're done?
Sure. All right, I'll play just solo without having any other tracks with me.
Okay. Would you give us? Gorgeous.
I mean, that was beautiful. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. That's a song I used to play back in the 1300s.
Yeah, it definitely brings you back there. Puts you right at ease.
Traveling minstrel. So Magdalene is here, and she has some words that she'd like to share with us.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Bring her through for a couple minutes. Greetings, beloveds. We wish to give our thanks to our beloved brother. We know the path and the journey that you are all upon right now. The most crucial aspect for you to focus upon is the love that each of you have for yourselves and for the others that you perceive when you look out through your eyes. There are times of turmoil that are coming forth, and focusing upon love that you have within you and without you will allow you to experience the storms that are coming. Keep you focused on what is the most important aspect of the truth of you, which is your love. You will be challenged, you will experience much that will ask you to forget. But we are here to remind you that peace is only a moment and a thought away. By taking a single breath, you are brought back to the love that you are. By taking a moment to pause and look and remember the light and the love that you are, the light and the love that you have. Allow yourself to listen to the melodies. Allow yourself to listen to the inner voice of wisdom within you that says, this is the truth of you, or the rest is not. The rest is indeed an illusion. Our love and blessings are with you always, beloveds. Call upon us, ask for us to assist you in these times where you are never alone. We are here. Allow yourselves to remember and know that our blessings are with you always. We
Thank
love you. You are welcome.
Beautiful. Always such a gentle message from Mary Magdalene. Always beautiful. Thank you. It puts me at ease.
Thank you to all of you who joined us tonight. David, thank you so much for being with you. Love you dearly.
Nice to see you guys.
You too, babe. You too.
Great to see everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone is participating. Thank you. Thank you, Lloyd, Mary, Sue,
You're welcome, Damaris,
Michelle,
May,
Meg,
Joanne.
Damaris. Yes.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. And to everyone who's viewing over on Facebook, thank you guys for being with us too.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
We love you. Be well, everybody.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Thank you, everyone. You again.
Thank you, David, so much. Beautiful. Thanks, Tammy. Good night, everyone.
Good night, you guys.
Good night, David. Love you, babe.
Love you too.
Bye, Rob.